A word is dead when it is said, some say. But I say, it just begins to live that day. And that is by Emily Dickinson.
Yeah, that's right.
You was right on the tip of your tongue, right? Well, welcome to StoriesRoc, where we lift the words off the page and we breathe life into them. Tonight, we are presenting a program called Kitchen Confidential. All of these stories are true personal stories that we share in front of a live audience. And so I'm just delighted to welcome you. My name is Leah Ruckberg, and I'll be your host today. Okay, Karen Morris is the Distinguished Professor of Business Law at Monroe Community College, where she's taught for 35 years. She's also the elected town judge in Brighton and the author of 2 textbooks, New York Cases in Business Law and Hotel, Restaurant, and Travel Law. She writes a column for Hotel Magazine Monthly entitled Legally Speaking, and she's won numerous writing and humanitarian awards in the community, and we're very honored to have you, Karen. But lest you think that law is just a dry subject, there's something you should know about Karen. Her very favorite work of authorship is Law Made Fun through Harry Potter's Adventures. And no, you may not have my copy. She has presented at numerous Harry Potter conferences and loves the enthusiasm, creativity, and commitment of the fandom. She also has recently published Law Made Fun through Downton Abbey. And I understand she has another one in the works about Game of Thrones. This is a busy girl. And there's more. Karen's latest hobby is magic. She performs all over Rochester, including the Fringe Festival. She loves watching people become wide-eyed in disbelief. And I think you will too when she shares her true stories, Edible Law.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm going to talk about a number of legal cases and the overlap between law and food. So I want to sort of give a nod today to the Carnegie Deli in New York City. It is renowned for its enormous meat sandwiches. Alas, it closed yesterday. It is, very sad. It is a lot of people's favorite. It was referenced in Woody Allen's Broadway Danny Rose. Indeed, there is a sandwich called the Woody Allen. It is $30 pastrami and corned beef sandwich. Quite yummy. There were always free fat dill pickles on the table. The coleslaw was incredible, and the sandwiches were just bursting with huge amounts of meat. If you are a dedicated fan, know that there is an outpost that is still open in Las Vegas, and that is at the Mirage Hotel. 2 legal issues of late involving the Carnegie, which no doubt contributed to its closing. One involved an affair between the husband of the owner and one of the servers. So this server lived upstairs. The Carnegie is in a several-story building. The husband of the owner was responsible for dealing with the tenants. He allowed this woman free rent, unknown to others involved in the business. He hired her as a server and had an ongoing affair. That came to light just a couple of years ago and, of course, did not make running the business easy. The other issue, curiously, was a gas siphoning. So the restaurant apparently had jerry-rigged the piping for gas so that about 50% of its gas came through to the restaurant before it went through the meter. So it was not paid for. This came to light, you may remember in New York, there was a big gas explosion. Several people were killed, and both the city and the gas company coordinated to investigate a number of places to find these reworking of the wiring in a dangerous way to prevent these explosions. Somebody reported a gas leak at the restaurant, and that led to the disclosure. The restaurant had to pay up $42,000 for restitution and another several $1,000s in penalties. And the restaurant was then closed for 10 months as a result of that, reopened in April of 2016, but for whatever reason didn't survive those circumstances and closed. Alas, I'm heading to New York in February and will miss my stop at the carnival. Another in the news overlap between food and the law involves our president-elect Donald Trump. So he was deposed in a case just this last week. The case involved a celebrity chef. The chef was Jose Andres. Jose Andres had a contract with Donald Trump to open a Mexican restaurant in Donald Trump's relatively new hotel at the old post office on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. The Mexican restaurant was supposed to open in September of 2016. The lease gave Trump a percentage of the revenue once the restaurant reached a certain threshold. Andres backed out, and the reason he did, he cited Trump's derogatory comments about illegal immigrants from Mexico and said that the remarks would make it impossible for him to run a successful dining establishment in the Trump property. Trump did find a replacement. The replacement is BLT Prime by another well-known chef, David Burke. He has the #1 steakhouse in Chicago, and it is in Zagat's top 100 restaurants in New York City. But for whatever reason, Trump is pursuing his breach of contract case against Andres. Now, interesting, Trump, if you follow, did settle the Trump University fraud case once he became president, saying he didn't want to be diverted, have his attention misdirected from preparing to be president. But he is pursuing this case and was subject to a deposition, a pre-trial testimony under oath, and he went to that just last week. One other issue in the news involving food, a very local issue and a sad one, is the fish seller in Rochester who has pleaded guilty to food stamp fraud, which is unlawful possession of food stamps. This was Irving Feldman. He's 61. His family has been in the food business for a long time. His father is a prominent Holocaust survivor and speaker in this community. The way that the fraud took place was that Mr. Feldman would buy food stamps for less than their value. So he would pay cash, pay about 50% of their value. The recipients of the food stamps were motivated to sell the stamps because with cash, of course, you can buy things that you cannot with food stamps, including alcohol, cigarettes, and beer and gas also. Also, interestingly, diapers and toiletries. So the food stamp program was developed in 1964 and had as its goal to provide improved levels of nutrition for low-income families. So this scheme frustrates that, of course. And then Feldman, would redeem the food stamps that he bought for half price to the government, claiming that he had given full price worth of food to those who had given him the food stamps. He had a second scheme, which is really very interesting. He encouraged the recipients of food stamps to buy fish from other food sellers. Then they would bring the fish to Feldman and he would give them the cash, half of the value of that good fresh fish. And then he would sell the fish at full price. So he's making a lot of profit, and those food stamp people are getting half of the value of those stamps that were supposed to be used for good nutrition. So he has pled guilty. He faces 5 years in prison, a $250,000 fine, plus restitution of $1,227,000. So yes, another example of food in the news. Another involves infestation, something we of course don't like to think about, but right in our own town. So several hundred people took sick after Thanksgiving dinner at a grease restaurant. Just this week, Legends downtown had four-legged, long-tailed infestations with a big convention coming in this weekend. So a lot of concern about whether they would be able to provide the food because they were shut down. The health department comes in, they find serious problems, they'll shut down the restaurant. Another one of my favorite involved in New York City. It was a Dunkin' Donuts, and a mouse was in the display of donuts in the window and nibbling on whatever his favorite was. Maybe it was glazed, maybe it was coconut. A photographer for the New York Post, of all bad timing, happened along, took a picture, front page of the New York Post. Horrible if you're a Dunkin' Donuts franchisee. But there was an explanation. It did turn out that the building had been subject to renovations, and when things are renovated, locations and circumstances and parts of the building get dislodged, and whatever might have been nicely housed there gets goes scampering about because they're losing their home and they're disrupted by the noise and all the changes to the building. And that's what caused the mice to come out and dine. Not good. One other case that I wanted to talk about involved exclusions. So the restaurants, of course, want to make money. They want to serve everybody who wants to, in the normal course, who wants to eat there. But the law says that if a restaurant is in kind, it can exclude people as long as the exclusion is not based on race, color, religion, national origin, disability, or gender. So for example, if a restaurant doesn't want people in bare feet, or maybe doesn't want people in jeans, or wants men to wear a jacket and women to wear something of the equivalent appropriate, the restaurant's entitled to do that and say to you, if you're in jeans, sorry, we cannot serve you this evening. That's okay, that's not illegal. So there was an interesting case recently. It was during the campaign. Cancun restaurant, Mexican restaurant in Sugarloaf, New York, which is 60 miles north of Manhattan, excluded two patrons who came into the restaurant. They were wearing the Donald Trump hats, Make America Great Again, and Donald Trump pins. So the restaurant told them they had to leave. They believed it was because they were rooting for Donald Trump and were very offended, took to social media. The restaurant said, no, that had nothing to do with it. They were drunk, they were disorderly, they were bothering other people in the restaurant, and that was the basis for their exclusion. This became a big issue on social media, but from a legal point of view, either way, the failure of the restaurant to serve them was not illegal discrimination. Being in supportive of one candidate or another is not a protected class, nor is being drunk and disorderly. So either way would have been legal. A related one, and this is the last, involved a a woman who went to a movie and she brought her own food. She had some fruit and raisins. And the movie theater had a rule that you can't bring in your own food. So they would not let her in with her food and excluded her from going in at all. She was very upset. It turns out she had diabetes. There was no food that the movie theater offered that she could eat, and she was bringing in food that was consistent with her dietary needs. And it is illegal to exclude based on disability, and an illness that affects your ability to eat, among other things, or impacts that ability, qualifies as a disability. So it didn't become a legal case. They worked it out, and the movie theater apologized and brought in a much more wider variety of food, including health food, thereafter. But it is illegal to discriminate for disability. So there are some cases, some instances where the law and food overlap.